Welcome to Sounding Board. This is a community television program produced by club members of Seroptimist International of Nevada. The mission of the organization is to improve the lives of women and girls throughout programs leading to social and economic empowerment. My name is Carol Bennett, and I'm the moderator today. I have a very special guest today, and it pleases me a lot because Reverend Jan Heglund is not only a chaplain, as you'll hear, but she also is a Seroptimist member from the club, which we call in Southern Marin, the Seroptimist International of Marin. So it's really a double pleasure that you're here, Jan. I'm just real excited. So Jan Heglund, Reverend Jan Heglund, is currently a chaplain for the City of San Rafael Police Department, as well as the San Francisco Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, better known as the FBI. Well, when I first met Jan, she gave me 3 business cards. One from the FBI, one from the City of San Rafael Police Department, and also another for the First Responder Support Network. We're going to have to cover all 3 of those, Jan. So first of all, Jan, tell us, how did you decide to become a chaplain?
Well, I was ordained at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco in 1994 as a deacon in the Episcopal Church.
Deacon?
Yes. And I had 3 years of seminary and 3 years of ordination process, and then was ordained in June of 1994. And deacons are bridge people.
Bridge.
And
sort
that
of like
means
making the bridge, okay?
Yes. And you were supposed to bring the needs of the church to the world and the needs of the world to the church. Okay. And people will ask me, did you ever want to be a priest? And I say, no, 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 no. And because deacons are out in the world, and that is where I wanted to be.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I started in the back door because I knew what I didn't want to do. All clergy are in the hospital, and we had to do a summer of hospital ministry. I don't want to be a hospital chaplain. Okay. And I had done some counseling for Jeannie Woodard when she was warden at San Quentin, but I knew I didn't want to be a prison minister.
Okay.
And I worked with the homeless, but I didn't want to do homeless chaplaincy.
So you sort of funneled it down. You knew what you didn't want to be, and then you finally found out.
I did. And one day in the Independent Journal was a tiny ad that said the San Rafael Police Department is starting a chaplaincy program.
And you just so happened to read that paper that day, that column.
That is right. That's probably why I'm a person of faith. Yeah. And it bells rang. So when I went in for the interview, and now, I've been doing this almost 25 years, but then I didn't know anybody. And so I'm waiting in an office for Walt Costa, who is now retired, to interview me. And afterwards, I told Walt, I said, while I was waiting for you, and I still remember this feeling like it was yesterday, I sat in that chair waiting, and I thought, this is me.
That's you.
This fits like a glove, and keep in mind, I didn't even know what it was yet. And so, that's how I started.
Interesting, interesting.
Yes.
Well, describe your life. What is it like being a counselor or a chaplain for the police department and the FBI? Are you on call 24/7, just like in the movies?
Yes, I am. I am.
Wow.
And they can reach me any place, anytime, both agencies, and they do. And I am there as a chaplain for the victims and the witnesses and the officers.
The victims, the witnesses, and the officers.
Certainly.
Interesting, because they all have trauma that they're going through.
For sure.
Right.
And a word that I like better than chaplain almost is pastoral presence. So I am a pastoral presence for all those people. I do a lot of counseling. I walk the journey with a lot of people after I do, death notification. I've been out on every call you can imagine. And I do follow-up. I work as a resource. I was out on a call last week, and this woman needed some information about what are the particulars that you do after your husband dies. And I have that information.
Good.
So I love to connect,
people with resources and needs with resources. As you said, the bridge.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, do you have, you were speaking of something you did last week, but have you done some memorable things that you would like to share to really bring your profession as a chaplain alive to people?
Sure. I would say that the high spots were, I worked I was at 9/11. I worked at 9/11 at St. Paul's, which was right at Ground Zero.
In New York City?
Yes, during that tragedy.
Now, were you called to go there, or
No.
you had the personal call?
It was interesting. I just became aware of it, as we all did.
Right.
And I said to my husband, my understanding husband, I am going. I don't want to be an observer. I want to be a participant. And so I think the world of the San Rafael Police Department. I don't know of a better place. And I was in the hall, and Mike Cronin, who is now police chief in Tiburon, was our police chief. And he said, hey, Reverend Jan, I hear you're going to go and work at 9/11. And I said, yes. And he said, when do you leave? And I said, Wednesday. And he said, turn in all your charges, and the police department will send you.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
that was, you know, how can you explain how life-changing that was?
Right.
And also, which was wonderful about that, is an exhibit came to Grace Cathedral years later with the two priests that were at St. Paul's, and they wanted somebody to walk the public through that exhibit on tape. And so Channel 2 had me do that, and it just came out so well. And what they said is, we could tell you were just there.
Yeah.
Because as I walked
and you
among
were
the things,
you were genuine, you were there.
yeah, my voice started to choke up, you know.
Yeah.
And then I was the chaplain at the FBI Academy.
Okay.
And that was wonderful.
What was wonderful about that, the academy?
Because
what does that mean? That's when others are going through their training, right?
they're going through their training, and pretty much by they've been accepted, they're cream of the crop. And I had the advantage that besides doing chapel, I could walk into any class I wanted to. And I sat in the back of a class, and the instructor was the leading authority on deadly weapons. And I thought, here, I am listening. I get to listen to this expert. And then I did counseling for if some of them failed at the gun range, they could be depressed, you know, because they put their heart and soul in becoming an agent. And then I am a big believer in sitting and eating with the people in the kitchen and getting to know the women at the desk. And one of those women, when I left, needle pointed for me a bookmark with an anchor on it. So it was wonderful.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the creds open a lot of doors around the world.
Creds being?
My credentials.
Credentials, your credentials for the FBI?
Yeah.
What kinds of doors? What do you mean by that?
Well, like when we have chaplain conferences, some of that I can't really say, but when we have chaplain conferences, and for ID, to be accessible to any FBI agency, for instance, even to get in the building, at the federal building in San
literally
Francisco.
it does open doors.
Yes,
in some cases.
Yes, well put.
Interesting. So you've seen things that even average chaplains wouldn't be able to see.
That's
by your
correct.
role with the FBI.
That's correct.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
And when I was at 9/11, a gentleman came up, because this is really fun. A gentleman came up, and he had said something to me like, do you know you have Hollywood eyes? And he wasn't coming on to me. And I started to laugh, and I said, not since my mother. And he started to laugh. He showed me all over, and he kept calling cars.
And this was where?
At 9/11.
9/11 in New York City.
He kept calling a car. He'd say, bring a car around for her. And I started noticing that everybody saluted him, and I watched Blue Bloods. And about a year ago, I'm watching Blue Bloods, and I'm watching the police commissioner for the state of New York in this role be saluted. And I thought, wait a minute. So I checked with somebody at the San Rafael Police Department who checked, and they said, Reverend Jan, was that the guy? I said, that was him. That was a New York police commissioner. And he drove me all around.
Oh,
I didn't know it. Probably just as well I didn't know it.
Your eyes did it. See, your eyes did it. So have we left anything out of your long list of chaplain roles? Let's maybe cover this. First responder, whatever. Tell us about that.
First Responders Support Network is a week-long debriefing session open to all emergency services personnel who are suffering from accumulated exposure to critical incidents.
That's a week long?
Week long.
And does it happen every year? Or
when we started, I was a founding member. I'm chaplain coordinator.
Okay.
When we started in 2001, we did it three times a year.
3 times
we
a
now
year.
do it twice a month.
Wow.
And we've put through over 1,000 people.
Wow.
And we just started a branch we're starting one in Kansas. We have one in Oregon. And that was always our goal. Is
And you
to spread
started this whole thing?
5 of us.
Oh, my
5 or 6
gosh.
of us. And so we're known nationally. We've had cops from Trinidad, Bobbies from London, and these people it's a very structured week.
So this is for first responders. So that means anybody who's in that role of first responding, and they come across something that they just can't handle.
Correct. And most of them then have PTSD.
Yeah.
And so they're clinicians. We have top people. They're clinicians. The peers are the clients that have come back to help. And we can only take 7 clients at a time. It's just such a heavy week. And chaplains. So it's one of the most rewarding things I think all of us on that team do.
Now, how often do you get involved in put your job
Well, when
into
we
that?
started to do it so often, I had to bring on more chaplains. You know, the clinicians had to bring on more clinicians. So now I have enough chaplains that we each get to do it 3 times.
For the year?
Yes.
3 times? Oh, that's
Yes. Yeah.
good. Good.
And we started a session called SOS, and it's spouses and significant others because they are affected.
Of course.
So we do that 3 times a year. Yeah.
You are amazing.
It's exhausting.
Just amazing. Yeah, I can see that. Wow. Well, I suppose there's some highs and some lows that you personally have to deal with. So how do you manage to get through them? I mean, let's talk about the highs maybe for a little bit.
The highs, I think, I actually feel this way. The high is every call I go on. If you're moving down from 9/11, you know, is every call I go on, because there is no greater privilege to be invited into people's lives at the most poignant times of their lives. And so every time I walk away from a call, you know, it is such a privilege. You know, I would say a high is every time I leave a call.
That just is a very good feeling that you're being able to help
And you've been
humanity.
very privileged to be there.
Right,
And to be
right.
trusted, you know.
It's a good way to look at things. So then there have got to be times though when it just takes everything out of you and it's the low. How do you get through that?
Well, the clinicians on First Responders Support Network, you know, they're so available, and so they're my best friends, and I have a spiritual director. And I think it's just my personal feeling that every clergy should have somebody like a spiritual director, because she says, I work only with clergy because my job is to keep you healthy because you minister to so many other people. And so it's about self-care, and I'm a big believer in self-care.
And this is called a what? A spiritual?
Well, for me, it's called a spiritual director.
Is that a profession? Is that something that people, or just somebody who happens to fill that role for you?
Yes, it's a profession, actually.
Really?
It's a profession. And it could be a therapist that somebody goes to, but just so that you have somewhere to put all the things that you see and do, or number 1, you will burn out. And number 2, you will cease to be effective.
Yeah.
And what a loss that would be, you
Yeah.
know?
You were, the last time I talked to you, you were talking about this young female officer that you helped. Can you describe that a little bit?
Yes, I only feel free to do that because it was 100 years ago, it seems, and she is no longer even in the area.
Okay.
But it was the first call of a person who died, who had actually committed suicide and had been inside of her dwelling for a couple days. And so I felt so sorry for this officer because it was the first time she had been exposed to that. I was impressed by the support she got from the staff, you know, and I knew it was tough for her. And she walked through it, you know. And so I was thinking about that because I watch out for those officers, you know. And so when it was over, I raced to the florist on 4th Street and I asked if they could put together a little nosegay. And then
And a nosegay for some people, what is a nosegay?
a little group of flowers like this, because I didn't want it to be overwhelming. That wasn't the point, you know. And then usually on those calls, the officers often would have Vicks in their car to put in their nostrils because the
Vicks,
smell.
like vapor rub that you have
Yeah.
for
Because
children's
the smell
colds.
can be awful. And so I put a little bottle of Vicks in there with it, and I put a little note that said, "I hope you never have to open this." And then I dropped it off to her. So it's those kind of things that I like to think it's what anybody would do.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you're special, you're special. So have you had any challenges along the way of just being a female in the profession?
I thought about that when I started. When I started, there weren't a lot of females working in a male-dominated field of law enforcement. That is so even for chaplains. There weren't many women chaplains either, you know. And so, you know, when I started at San Rafael Police, because I wondered how that would be.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, they are slow to trust, with good reason. So they're not going to trust me unless they know me. And they're not going to know me unless I'm around.
Right.
So I started being around all the time.
In their face.
And so then when I started being kidded in briefings, that is when I knew I had it made. Because nobody has senses of humor like officers, and I can give it back. And so then it was interesting, an officer said to me one time, a captain, he said, "You know, Reverend Jan, what is so great about you being a woman is we can hug you." And I want to tell you, that is almost a trademark today. So those, I hadn't seen that coming, so that was fun to realize.
When I think about that, I think about, there are a couple of the chaplains that I know through the Novato
Sure.
Police Department. You know, I think there's a man that I know and there's a woman that I know, and I think, that's interesting, you know, how huggable are they? I was just thinking about that, how huggable they were. And I was saying, you're right, I think I could, you know,
Yes.
it's interesting. This
And
is
I'm
a
a
total
big
different
believer in
role.
hugs.
Yeah, I am too. I love hugs.
Yeah, me too.
Spread those germs. No.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, tell me about some awards that you've received. I hear that you've got some pretty famous awards.
Well, you know, a highlight was being inducted into the Marine Women's Hall of Fame.
Okay.
When I was notified of that, as I remember, I started crying. And it was interesting. That same week, I received the Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award.
Wow.
And so, and then, you know, being a
Where
Seroptimist.
was that California or national?
That was Marin.
Marin, okay.
And then I had gotten the, and I think this was national as the NAMI Award for Clergy of the Year.
Oh, nice.
And, but I would say all of those are wonderful. And the people you meet, as you might imagine, oh, they're lifelong friendships, you know? But I, a little while ago, received you and I were talking about how much trouble I have pronouncing this,
Meritorious
citation from the San Rafael Police Department. And that award, that nomination...
It's kind of like notorious.
yeah, I will remember. That nomination comes from the police department itself, from the staff
Nice.
and from the employees. So that meant absolutely the world. That meant the world.
Great.
And when they read the little proclamation, I think one of the things that meant the most to me was, I have a copy of it, it's framed in my office, was it said she knows the difference between being a pastor and a law enforcement chaplain. And I work at that. And so that was really rewarding. And my family could be there, as they were at the others.
Yeah, yeah.
So anytime, I think the good thing about it is it raises up the agencies that you're working for. You know, it raises them up. And like it gives me a chance to tell what I do. Well, that isn't all about Jan.
Yeah.
It's about a department that values that.
Okay, that's true.
And so it really is a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, when you go to the San Rafael Police Department, and you said you go to their briefings, how often is it? Is that on a daily or weekly basis? Or
Well, there's
what is
7
that?
o'clock briefing in the morning and 5 o'clock in the evening.
Oh.
And I try and hit a couple of those during the month. And I usually bring food,
Okay.
you know. And it's just, I love to be there. But then, as I think I said to you, when I walk in the door at the police department, I am home. I mean,
Yeah.
I just feel it. And so briefing is a good way to keep up on what's doing. There's always a lot of kidding. You know, it's their time to be together for that shift, you know. And it's a good way for me to hear too. If someone can grab me and say, hey, did you know that so-and-so is having a bad time?
Yeah.
And I appreciate that because sometimes I don't know, you know. So it's fun, yeah.
This is a little on the side, but do you play a similar role in the Seroptimus organization by any chance, helping out women there?
Not necessarily. We sort of do it as a group, you know. I would say we do that as a group in our awards and our events. I received, it was then called Making a Difference Award. We call it the Ruby Award.
Okay,
and so I think that was my first exposure to Seroptimus. Come to think of it. And it was because of that then I joined.
Interesting. Good. Good for you. Yeah. Good. I always think as Seroptimus sisters, we kind of look out for each other, and
very much so.
I didn't know if you had any formal structure as part of that or not.
I just used the same tools.
Yeah. Good. Good. So Jan, if you were to help us wrap up this program, what would you like to leave as just, you know, kind of thoughts for people to think about, or if you've forgotten anything else you want to talk about?
Not forgotten anything. I would say if anyone feels a little nudge that this might be something, law enforcement chaplaincy might be something they would be interested in, I would say pay attention to that nudge because there's a reason for it. And I think maybe the most important qualities, obviously confidentiality is a given. And one of my soapboxes aside from that is being ecumenical, and that means not pushing for your tradition or your church. That's why I like the word pastoral presence. I am there as support for anybody, no matter where they are in their journey. And the other thing is it would be important to learn about the culture because it's a different culture. And I think if a person doesn't understand it, then they will not be effective. And they will actually not be welcomed. And so I would say, go for it, because it's one of the greatest things you can do.
So if somebody had any questions for you, would you be able to share an email address?
Sure,
and
sure.
Can you just sort of spell?
It's little letters all run together. It's D like David, E like elephant, C like Charlie, Jan like my name, H like Harold, E like elephant, G like George, at gmail.com. And I would welcome any questions.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you. That's really nice of you to be so open.
Asking.
Yeah, good, good. Okay. Well, we still have a little bit more time. Anything you want to add for a last minute comment?
Let's see. I would say that we learn so much from our clients at First Responders Support Network. And you know what would be nice if you're in a restaurant and you see a fireman or a policeman, this happened to us all the time after 9/11. If you just went over and said, thanks for what you do. And like, you know, one fireman said, I thought, what is wrong with this picture? I'm running in and everybody else is running out. So they see things none of us should ever see, nor probably will see in our lifetime. And right after 9/11, when we would go out for dinner, it would be wonderful. They would go to pay, and someone, the waitress would say, that couple over there in the corner paid your bill. So that's excessive, but just a thank you for what you do would be so appreciated. Right. And besides, it's appropriate. Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jan. Thank you for being here. You're just a fabulous person.
A privilege.
What a nice person
Thanks.
you are.
Thanks.
So glad you have crossed my life.
Me too.
So besides thanking Jan, Reverend Jan Heglund for being our guest today, I want to thank Pam Hesley, the Novato Community Television Executive Director, for bringing us all together, and she supports us with the Sounding Board program that we at Seroptimus International of Novato put together. I also want to thank Marcus Oken and Nick Logan, the filming crew from Novato Community Television. But most of all, I want to thank you, our viewing audience.